in this playoffs.
Let's just segue that into the Misfits convo, because I think one thing you've nailed there is the most disappointing part. If you're a fan of Misfits, is this. Look, yeah, sure, we can all get our popcorn and hope Vethio has some pop off games. I would imagine he's going to have at least one or two, and he'll get to have his moment where he's the MVP. He shows he's really good, but unfortunately, this is going to be one of those stories where it's like, shame his team isn't good enough, maybe in the future. Because I have to say, Dom, the cool thing if you're a Misfits fan was right towards the end of the split is when Neon had a bunch of these key games. Obviously, one of them was that game where they caught the massive throw and he team fought his way out of it. But the problem is, like you say, Jinx specifically was so OP if you were that type of team fight ADC that it's just an obvious ban. And if you do ban it, like you say, it's just Vethio you're dealing with at that point in time. And so I have to say, unfortunately, even though Misfits did this great job getting the third seed, mate, bearing in mind, I think Vitality is going to beat XL. I don't think there's anyone they can beat in the playoffs. I think they can't win a series. And I'm not hating, like, it's just the situation they're in, unfortunately. And you add in, like you say, some of the meta swap stuff. I don't really know how they do it. In fact, even add that in itself, right? If everyone's playing shit like Volibear, what can Slatan do? Just do twice as good a game on Lee Sin? Like, fucking hell, you're asking a lot. And then add in this as well. Mate, Hirit got some games towards the end of the split. That guy still isn't constant. You can't rely on him. You can't rely on him to have two good games in a row, I don't think. So I actually think this Misfits team will be very bad in the playoffs, I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan. I think that they're very easy to prep for. I mean, I think that generally you just ban Lee Sin versus them every fucking game. You don't let Schlatten have it one time. And he just, like, his Xin didn't look good. Maybe he doesn't have to play that much Zen anymore. What is going to be another pick that he looks really good on? Maybe Hecarim? Like, maybe he could put in some Hecarim games, but I think that the people
you better get behind on that shit. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. So that's like, you better get ahead in that fucking game.
Well, I mean, I think just in general, when you look at this team, the people that need to step up are Hirit and Mersa, and I just don't believe that they're going to step up to a level where this team can win series. And the problem is that, like, with the bracket, it's like, so their first game is against Rogue. And if G2 ends up losing to Fnatic, that means that their next game is against, like, the fourth team that just came off, like, a series win. So it's either G2, Vitality, or I guess XL, if XL somehow starts running the gauntlet, just beats G2 and Vitality. So if G2 loses that first match, it's so hard. I mean, they just don't get to play an easy team. They don't, like, maybe they could win a series if they played XL in the first round, but they just won't be able to play any of the teams that are actually exploitable. So I don't know. I just feel like Misfits is a flawed team. And when you think about their games, right, like, how many games did they just randomly come back in? Like, you have at least the Fnatic game and the G2 game. Those are, like, right off the top of your head. You're like, these were massive throws by the enemy team. So I mean, if you already take those away, okay, well, suddenly they're like, I mean, it's hard to do this for teams, but then they're like a 10-8 team. Like, if you take away those two games and they end up losing those games, then they look significantly worse, right? Like, they're...
And mate, that's with one of the hardest MVP fucking carry performances I've seen in years.
Yeah.
So that means in a sane world, if he just played like 10% worse, dude, I think they would have been the team that, like, failed to get in the playoffs. They would have been, like, right on that bracket, like fucking Mad Lions were. They would have been in that spot, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very easy for this team to look significantly worse with just a couple of games going slightly differently, or teams just being able to win with 10k gold advantages. So I don't know. I feel like they've already performed really well. I just don't see how they're going to get better from here. Like, I just don't see what their angle is. Like, unless Hirit just starts becoming Hirit of old and he's able to play things like Jace, like, which he used to be really good at, and, you know, play side lane well and just be up in CS and top lane every now and then, or at least, like, not be getting solo killed. I mean, I think the problem with Hirit is that he's just dying so much generally. Like, he's the type of guy
who dies way too much.
Like 3 or 4 times in lane, he can just die. Like, that's crazy. Like, you can't just be putting up numbers like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's rough for Misfits. I can't really see them doing much here at all.
Dude, that's what I hate about his game, is that unfortunately he looks like he is the type of Korean top laner who is going for that, like, the shy type shit of, like, I either carry the game or I hit the game. And the problem with that is, like, especially in LEC, bro, we go for Odo Amne type top laners where, like, depending on the meta, like, think about the meta you were just in right now, where actually top wasn't even as important. It was more about AD and mid. You have to be able to sort of survive in those metas, otherwise your team just can't be good. Like, in this scenario, yes, if he was last year when he had his picks and he was playing really well, if he was on, like, Camille or something, yeah, he might carry the whole game. As you say, like, not only game to game can't I trust him, but he has these games where he'll just die like 9 times in a game, mate, and barely do anything. So, like, if you look at the playoffs, this just shows you where he's at, right? Yes, Finn is in the playoffs. Okay. That's it. Like, dude, this guy's the worst. Like, this guy is competing with Finn for the worst top laner in the playoffs. Like that's just reality. He probably is the worst, right? It's hard to tell because I'm not really sure where I rank Finn. He probably is the worst, isn't he? Out of the 6.
Yeah. I would say here it's the worst. Here it's just the worst top laner in playoffs. I mean,
what do you want?
To be fair, there's a lot of good top laners in playoffs.
There is, of course. Yeah.
You have Odo Omne, BB, Wonder. Those are top 3 in my book. This split, and then Alfari like 4. And then like, could he be better than Finn? Maybe he could like play better in a series than Finn, but was he better than Finn in this split? Hell no.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So yeah, my problem basically of their team is once you get past the amazing Vetio story, it's like there's not that much left. Like as you said, there was Neon. He had. By the way, I also do think I hope that this split has actually made people realize Neon has been on like fucking like 3 different teams now or something mental in LEC, and he's always at minimum serviceable. So I hope he isn't just going to keep fucking get moved his whole career because he. By the way, after watching him play in all these different teams, he just should be like. Listen, if Misfits end up being a champion, they'll probably have to sell him, yes. But he should be on a team that's like a borderline playoff team, at least. That is this guy's level. He's just shown it with he's had different supports, different teammates. He's just a good team fighter, mate. Just what you want an ADC to do.
I mean, he's definitely better than people like Flocked right now. Like I would take Neon over Flocked in a heartbeat. But it seems like people always want the rookie hype, you know, like people are always willing to buy into the player that could be the next big AD rather than Neon. But I mean, I would definitely say that, I mean, for example, I would have had him second all pro. I would have had him second all pro after Upset. I would have Upset 1, Neon 2. I don't even know who else I could even
had comp, I think.
Yeah, I think people had a lot of comp. I think Neon was just better than comp. Generally, I mean, I think comp had really strong like first couple weeks, and then I think he had like some pretty weak performances that ended up getting covered up by his team. Like he had some, I mean, he had like
they're different players for their teams though. Like Neon actually had to straight up carry some team fights occasionally, basically, if it wasn't Vethio. Whereas like to me, comp's more like he just does like the classic ADC. It's just like output consistent damage, play like reasonably safe, just do your job in the team fight. That's it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if Malrong was having like a nuts like early split, and then you have like Odo who's performing really well first or second, then you have Larson who's probably second.
Can't be the best. Yeah, exactly. I'm with you. Everyone can just be the best off that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's what people get trapped in. They're like, so everyone is the best.
They do.
It's like, well, no. Like, I mean, I think comp was a big improvement over what you'd expect, considering that he had always been on like pretty much like bottom tier teams, like actual bottom tier teams. But yeah, I mean, I probably would have had him third. I think Neon just had too many good games. Like he carried too many games. So
there was even a little detail I saw in the Deficio interview that was on Invent Global, where when he was talking about why they picked Neon, he actually said that they picked Neon really early because he basically, like after the meeting, like Neon obviously knew didn't have much better offers. So he sort of committed early, like, yeah, you're also the team I want to join. And supposedly the reason they targeted him is they wanted specifically, since they were letting Vander go, they wanted the ADC to be a vocal ADC so that in theory then when they brought in someone like Mercer, who's obviously more of a rookie, that in theory like he could sort of lead that guy. Well, if you look at the game, like, dude, if you look at these team fights, I could easily believe Neon's one of the main voices in this fucking squad. It looks like they just called around himself in those fights, and by the way, it worked like a motherfucker. So props to the official if that really is how they recruited. It sounds like they did a very shrewd job of sort of getting what they needed for their team without giving up too much, because there's too many teams in history where, I mean, you could argue maybe Rogue last year was this, like, yeah, you upgraded with Trimby mechanically over Vander, but it seemed like you lost a little bit of whatever Vander brought to your team, you know, sort of synergy, communication, all that jazz.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think it actually helps a lot when you're going to go with like a rookie mid and a rookie jungle and a rookie support. Like those are normally the roles that are going to be super vocal. So it feels like that is kind of like where Misfits can falter in terms of like strategy, and that's why sometimes they just get behind so fucking much because they're just not able to like match the early game polished plays from other teams. But once it gets to team fighting, it feels like Neon knows like how much damage he can output and what needs to be done in order for him to deal damage, where I think a lot of AD carries don't really know. Like, you know, like if the jungle and the support are the ones that are calling fights late game, I feel like sometimes it kind of starts looking like G2 fights where it's like they're going in and they're like, okay, can we go here? And it's like, you need the AD carry that's going to be like, no, we can't fight in this location. Yes. Like I need like vision here. I need a ward over here. And I need to be standing like this. And like, you need to be marking this guy on the flank, because if he flanks me, I'm fucking dead. Like you need those types of AD carries that are able to like visualize the whole fight before it happens in order to actually proficiently fight them. And I think that that's something that Neon is really good at. And obviously it's a core strength to champions that he's really good at. So like Aphelios and Jinx were his two best champions. They were the two best champions in the meta, and those champions have no escapes. So they need people to actually play around them, and they need to be able to recognize how fights are going to play out beforehand. And I think that this actually is something that, from what I've heard, Mersa is pretty good at for a support. So I think that also supplements like some of the deficiencies in the team, where normally I feel like supports are not as great at understanding the game in the super late game as, you know, other roles, because I mean, it's just hard to understand how much damage output your carries have and all those types of things. But it feels like Mersa is honestly pretty good at that as well. So maybe I'm not going to give all the credit to Neon, but I definitely think that that's something that is strong by him. And you can tell that he knows what's going on in a fight. He knows where people are before the fight, where other AD carries don't. You know, like you see a fight start for Karzi and he's just like dead instantly. It's like, okay, you didn't see that shit happen. Like, you didn't know what the fuck was going on here. Like, you just died in 1 second, man. Like you didn't even react with any of your summoners or anything. So Neon definitely has that quality that is solid.
Yeah, an interesting detail along those lines from the same interview was that when Deficio was talking about Mercer, he said that actually they brought in Vander and Mercer pre-season, and they sort of let them try out, and that they picked Mercer. And the reason he said why is because apparently in the pre-season, he said the support pool of champions was crazy and people were playing like 15 different things, but that Mercer had like adapted to all of them, right? That to me, dude, if I translate that, right, he didn't really just get amazing at 15 different champions. What that implies to me is he just must have a good mind for like the distinct identities of the champions, and as a result, what you do differently with them. Because I've seen a lot of players in League, even pro players, where their problem is they're really good at the game, but they play like champions in a similar fashion, even if the champion kit is totally different. Classic example, even people like Hillsang. You put them on the wrong ones, self-made, you put them on the wrong champion, they'll play it like it was their favoured champion and just do fuck all in the game sometimes. So fair play, maybe this guy just has a good mindset for what the different roles are supposed to do, how they interact. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.